Hey guys, it's me, Grammy Midwife. So we're doing a little bit different angle today. We're going to see how this works. But today we're canning potatoes. Now, why am I canning potatoes? Because I live in the South and storage for potatoes is kind of difficult when the weather is hot and humid. They all tend to sprout, which is basically what I've got now. I have a 50-pound box of Idaho potatoes that are all starting to sprout, which I plan on taking some of them and making them grow more potatoes. But for now, we are out of potatoes. My husband and I love homemade au gratin scallop potatoes, and he looks forward to it all the time. And it takes a bit of effort to make it, especially when you work a full-time job and come home and have dinner on the table by 6. So I find it easier if I can my scallop potatoes, or at least can the potatoes in the slices, and that way I can use them immediately. And then all I have to do is make my cheese sauce, throw it in the oven, and they're done in about 30 minutes. It's just as easy as buying those boxed ones, and you don't have all the processed food and stuff and all of the preservatives. So I'm going to show you how to can potatoes, but first we got to peel. So we've got them peeled, and I wish I could really peel that fast. It would be really nice. But I'm still pretty fast at peeling. But now I'm going to cut them up because they are kind of big. So I'm going to cut them probably in half and lengthwise, and then slice them with my OXO or OXO slicer. I have found this to be one of the better slicers. I've gone through many mandolin slicers and sliced my hand 500,000 times on these, but this one is by far the best one I've found. And I just keep them in cold water until I'm ready to actually can them, and that way they don't turn brown on me. It's the oxygen in the air that causes them to oxidize and turn brown. Now, normally I use smaller potatoes, and the smaller potatoes aren't quite as big, and you don't have to worry about slicing them in half like this, but these are pretty big potatoes. They're nice baking potatoes. I baked some for dinner last night, but I got a really good deal on them. Y'all know potatoes have just gone up ridiculously high in price. These were 50 pounds for $24.99. So my husband saw them and he goes, "Well, they're sprouting." I was like, "I don't care. Bring them. I will plant some, and I will cook some, and I will can some." So he's a Irish heritage, so he eats lots of potatoes. This is roughly, I'm guessing, around 6 pounds. I'm going to do these, I normally can in pints, but potatoes take up so much room in the jars that I'm going to do these. There's one I missed. I'm going to do these in quarts. I'm sorry, I usually do them. I did them to start with when I started canning potatoes in pints. It just wasn't enough potatoes for us for dinner. I even tried the 24-ounce jars, and they're really still not enough because we like to eat leftover potatoes, and we don't get two good meals off of 24-ounce jars of potatoes. So I'm going to do them in quarts today. Normally I like to can in pint jars because you can fit 20 pints, which is equivalent to 10 quarts, in my 23-quart Presto canner, and you can only fit 7 quarts. So you can see why I like to can in pints. You can put, what, 20% more, 30% more product in your canner in a pint when you're canning in pints as opposed to quarts. But we're going to be canning in quarts today. But in order to use this, it comes with a handy dandy little holder so you don't, have to get those fancy gloves. And I put it on 1/4 inch. It has anywhere from 1/16 like potato chips all the way up to 1/4 inch. And I like the 1/4 inch. It does nicely for and you just stab your potatoes with this. You start out with it up high, and it's a little tricky sometimes. You have to kind of get it going and be careful doing it. If you have to move your hands down, you will. This is very sharp. Now, when it gets down to this level, that's when you put your palm up here and hold on to it and kind of push as you go. So it does it pretty nicely. And they come off in nice little slices. Now, sometimes I will start off with it at an angle, simply to give me a little bit more leverage, but I'll lower my angle as I get further down, and it really doesn't matter. All right, I think I have done them all, and none hung to the bottom. So I'm going to get them in the oven. I've already cleaned and sanitized them with a little bit of Clorox water. And now I'm going to boil some water. All right, so we're going to let this water boil. My jars are coming up to temperature. And then I'm going to get my canning salt. Jar's empty. Now, I'm going to let my water boil and then bring it down in temperature some, or at least simmer. So what I'm going to be doing is putting my potatoes in the jars with a teaspoon of canning salt and then topping it off with hot water. Now, this is not National Home Safety Canning, whatever the acronym is, approved, but this helps to prevent too much starch buildup because I'm using Idaho potatoes, which typically are very fluffy. They're a russet style. So they're very fluffy and full of starch. So you don't want to just, I don't like to blanch them per se in the pot. We're kind of blanching them in the jar. And for that reason, in letting them soak some, and that kind of takes some of the starch out of them. But yeah, so I'm going to pour this water off. Okay. So just put them in there long enough for my oven to preheat up to that temperature. And then what I'm going to do now, when my water is still coming up to temperatures, I'm going to go ahead and put my salt in my jars. Because I know I'm going to do at least 7 quarts. So I'm going to put a teaspoon of salt in each jar. Now, if you're doing pints, you'll do a ½ teaspoon. And you actually can put as little or as much salt. The salt does help with the preservation. So you need at least a ½ teaspoon to pints and a whole teaspoon to quarts. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my hand and take these potatoes and start filling my jars. And just kind of shake them down. The jars are not too hot to handle, really. They're just, mainly I just did it to get them warm and to dry them. But you want to get your potatoes in the jar, kind of get them settled in. So you may have to shake the jar a bit to get them to settle in. You may have to stuff some in there. That's fine. You just pack those down and they're pretty good. I've got 7 quarts. So now we're going to add some water. And this is coming to a boil. So I'm going to go ahead and take it off. And I'm going to use a measuring cup instead of my ladle, because my ladle just doesn't give me enough at a time. You want to leave 1 inch headspace. Now, when you go to debubble, you're probably going to wind up with some more headspace. And that's fine. You just add some more water. kind of, I always have chopsticks around. My husband always gets chopsticks if he's eating Chinese food. But you just kind of go around the outside, and you may have a debubbling tool, and that's fine. You're mainly just getting as many of the air pockets out as possible. And as I said, you can see the bubbles coming up on that. I don't know, I may have to zoom in some. But see, it's left me with some more headspace that I'm going to have to probably add a little bit more water. That's fine. But you want to get as many air pockets out as you can, because air pockets are places for bacteria to grow. And if you crunch some potatoes, don't worry about it. All right, so we're going to add a little bit more water in on top of these. Make sure we get all our potatoes underwater and get it up to the 1-inch headspace. All right. Lips. Now you want to wipe the lips of your jars. You can use vinegar or water. We were neat enough that I think I can get away with just water. So then we're going to put our flats on. Try not to touch the rubber. Just touch the outer rings. You don't have to even use one of those fancy little magnet tools as long as you don't touch the rubber. They're not so hot now that you can't handle them with your bare fingers. And then you're just going to screw your lid on finger tight. Finger tight allows for the expansion in the jar to release what air is left in the jar and allow it to seal. Now I have a Presto 23 quart Presto electric, or not electric, pressure canner, and I'm going to, because these are kind of warm, I'm going to put warm water in here to get this process started. Now the Presto canner has little indents down here to let you know how much water to put in, and you want to fill this when it's empty of jars. So there's a little indentation. I think it's around 2 quarts or 3 quarts. I just fill for that indentation, put my finger there, and fill it up until it reaches that level. And that's about right. And then my, I'm not sure what this is called, but you put that down in the bottom, and then you're going to place your jars in there. And like I said, in the Presto 23 quart, you can fit 7 quart jars in here at a time. All right, check my canner to make sure, or my canner lid, because this is what does the magic here. So my seal is a little dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to spray some oil on my hand and then just kind of go around it. And what that does is it just keeps it nice and lubed up so it makes a good seal. Okay, I'm going to put it back in the lid, and you want to make sure that your vent hole is open, and it is. I can see light through it. This is the vent. This is the gauge. This is the safety pop-off valve, and this is your pressure indicator. So what we're going to do is you screw it down and leave the weight off, because you want it to vent. Once it comes up to temperature, this little vent right here will pop up, and you will have a steady stream of steam coming out of the top. You want it to vent like that for 10 minutes. Oh, towel fell down. After it vents for 10 minutes, then we're going to place the weight on and let it can or pressure can. For my altitude is 11 pounds. If you have a weighted pressure canner instead of the dial gauge, it will be 10 pounds of pressure for 40 minutes for quarts. You will do 35 minutes for pints. If you're going to do the 24-ounce jars, I would do those also for 40 minutes. Simply because you're not at that pint measurement, but not quite, but you're in between the pint and the quart. It's a pint and a half. So I would be safe and just do it at the quart. All right, we're going to let that come up to boil and we'll be right back. And it's starting to vent some steam, so we're going to give it just a few more minutes, a couple more minutes, and it will have a steady stream. And you can tell also that this vent has not popped up yet. Okay, we have a steady stream of steam coming up off the pressure canner. The pop has not lifted up yet, but it's okay. It will in just a minute. We're going to set our timer for 10 minutes and let her rock and roll for 10 minutes. Okay, we are nearing and the time is almost up, and we are about to add the weight, which is this. So 3, 2, 1, and now. So what you do after you add the weight is you wait until the gauge comes up to right about 11 pounds. If mine goes to 10, it's no big deal. If it goes a little over, it's no big deal. But once it comes up to 11 pounds, you turn your stove down and start timing for 40 minutes. So we are at around 7 pounds now, 8 pounds of pressure. The nice thing about a pressure canner is it actually reaches a temperature under pressure boiling of 240 degrees, which is a safe temperature to pressure can or to preserve low acid foods. And of course, potatoes are a low acid food. The 240 degrees does kill off any contaminants and hopefully also botulism toxin. Okay, so we are nearing in on 11 pounds. So I'm going to turn my stove down to just under the 4. That's on mine. And we're going to start timing for 40 minutes. Oops. Let's do that again. Okay, there we go. All right, and we will be back when time is up. We're at 11 pounds of pressure, and it's rolling. Okay, we are counting down to 0. My pressure gauge got a little bit higher than what I wanted it to, but that's okay. It'll be fine. Just means that it's pressure canned at a little bit higher pressure is all. It's in the safety zone, so no need to worry and no need to reprocess. So what we'll do when the timer goes off, we just turn off the stove, let it cool down. Once this pop-up valve goes down, we can loosen our lid. Okay, time is up. We'll turn the timer off, turn the stove off, and we're going to let the pressure come down until this pop-up valve goes all the way down. And we'll be right back. Stay tuned. All right, so our little pop-up valve has gone back down, which means it's down to 0 pressure. So we're going to unscrew the lid just a bit. I'm going to take this off. And then I'm just going to take the lid and tilt it a bit. All right, so this is the way you're supposed to take the lid off. You want to lift it off away from you. And so what I'm doing is I'm letting it cool gradually. If you let it cool suddenly by taking the lid completely off and removing the jars while they're still at the temperature they're at, you will get a lot of siphoning. So this helps prevent some of the siphoning off of the jars. So we're going to let it cool all the way down, at least until it's at a decent temperature where it's not completely steaming coming out of it. And then we'll be back and take the jars out and put them over here and set them on the counter and let them cool. And we'll be back in just a bit. All right. So it's cooled down to the point where I can take this lid completely off. So I'm going to take it completely off, lay it over to the side. And I'm going to always use 2 grabbers. I just feel like it is a waste of time to use only one. I've actually had a couple of these already sealed. But as it cools some, and there still may be a little siphoning. Siphoning is when the temperature cools fast enough that the liquid will actually come out of the jar. You want it to cool to the point where it seals, but you don't want much siphoning. You can see how it's still bubbling when it comes out. So the water is still boiling in there, and as it cools, it will have a tendency to spew out the top, and it can make a difference in your seals. But this is what they look like when they come out of the canner. And incidentally, I couldn't resist, and I actually did another 7 quarts because when I cut those up to put the ones out to chit, I said, why not just go ahead and fix them, and we'll can them, and we'll have 14 quarts instead of 7. So we're going to let the temperature cool down some more in the pressure canner, and then I'm going to put these in there, and we'll have 14 quarts instead of 7. So you guys have a great day and keep on canning.